Okay. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so I hope everyone is having a good week, meditating and practicing. So it is the Vesak month. Tomorrow is the full moon day of the Vesak. So those of you, however, you may celebrate Happy Vesak in advance. And I hope that you're also spending some time to do some meditation. Okay, so today we are going to continue the reading of Venerable Maha Moggallāna's life story. And this chapter is going to be on Maha Moggallāna's death. So last reading, we read about his last days. And Venerable Sariputta, his very good friend, and also the other chief disciple, actually passed away before him. And when they passed away, they were both they were in different locations. So Sariputta, those of you who remember when we read Venerable Sariputta's life story, he traveled back to his parents' home, where his mother lived. So Venerable Sariputta actually passed away before his mother did. His mother had a very long life. And then after that, Venerable Maha Moggallāna passed away, and they both passed away before the Buddha passed away, just a couple of months before the Buddha passed away. And when Venerable Sariputta passed away, soon after that, Maha Moggallāna had a interesting encounter with Mara and realized that he and Mara had some connection in the past. Now, Maha Moggallāna felt like, his death was coming as well. And because he has psychic ability, actually, he could have extended his lifespan, but he didn't see any reason to. And so he just let nature take its course. Okay, so now we shall, excuse me, read about Venerable Maha Moggallāna's death. So surrounded by many of his monks, the Buddha passed away peacefully during a meditative absorption, which he entered with perfect mastery. So that's later, yeah. Venerable Sariputta's death in his parental home, likewise with fellow monks in attendance, was similarly serene. Ananda, Venerable Ananda, died at the age of 120, quite an old age. As he did not wish to burden anyone by his funeral, he entered meditative concentration on the fire element so that his body vanished in a blaze. Wow, so he must have had some interesting psychic ability as well to do that. By the time of Venerable Ananda's death, he was also an arahat. Now, considering the serene death of the master, the Buddha, and of these two disciples, Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Ananda, one would have expected that Maha Moggallāna too would have undergone the final dissolution of the body under peaceful circumstances. But Moggallāna's end was very different. Though the gruesome nature of his death did not shake his firm and serene mind. So Maha Moggallāna is already an arahat. So whatever happens to his body would not shake his mind, because there's no longer the craving, clinging to the form. So Moggallāna Mahāmoggallāna, passed away a fortnight after his friend Sariputta on the new moon day of the month Kartika, so somewhere around October, November, in the autumn. This would be autumn in northern India. And the great decease of the Buddha took place on the full moon night of the month Visakha, which is what we're about to observe. Half a year after the death of his two chief disciples. The Buddha was in his 80th year when he passed away, while both Sariputta and Maha Moggallana died at the age of 84. The circumstances of Moggallana's death are related in two sources, the Dhammapada commentary and the Jataka commentary. Although these two sources share a common core, they differ in details, which no doubt stem from the embellishments in the course of oral transmission. So what's trying to say here is before the teachings of the Buddha were recorded on, my memory fails me sometimes. I think it's called Olali. Anyway, please correct me if I'm wrong. And that didn't happen till very much later. Before that, from the time of the Buddha's passing, the teachings of the Buddha are passed down orally. So each, let's say, book of the Tipitaka is, there's a responsibility of a group of monks to memorize and recite. So for example, I'm just saying, okay, this group, you are in charge of preserving Digha Nikaya. Oh my, I'm just imagining, I tend to imagine a bit. So I'm imagining that the group of arahats or monks in charge of responsible for the oral preservation of the Digha Nikaya must have been great, have great memory. Because they would have to recite again and again to each other, I'm assuming, because otherwise, how would you preserve the oral transmission? If you think about it, like say, in today's world, we live in the 21st century, right? How does one remember songs, let's say? And nowadays, pop songs are hardly even 5 minutes. They're only like what? Average 3 minutes? But then how does one memorize them? If you ask kids, like I teach kids, and the song that's trending nowadays, they can just easily follow along and sing it. Of course, it's a very bad comparison because a song nowadays is nothing compared to the Tipitaka, But I guess one of the ways is through recitation. So recitation then would be until today. A good example is the Patimokkha, which is still part of the monks' Vinaya. So they recite the Patimokkha. I think it's fortnightly or once a month, depending on a full moon day. And that's a way to preserve traditionally, back in the old days, before there was written effort. So you can imagine, I suppose, what the author is trying to say here is the circumstances of Maha Moggallāna's death come from two sources, one from a section in Dhammapada, another from a section in the Jataka, but they are commentaries. And so if these had been passed down orally, there might have been some differences, no doubt, is what the sentence is trying to say. So the account here will be based on the Dhammapada commentary, with the differences in the Jataka commentary noted parenthetically, in parentheses, assuming. Okay, so anyway, it'll be based on the Dhammapada. Now, because the Buddha was so skillful as a teacher, leading countless people to the gates of deliverance, to enlightenment, to the populace of Magadha, the people of Magadha, for the most part, had transferred its allegiance from the various rival ascetic orders to the enlightened one and his Sangha. So if you recall, past couple of Sunday readings, and quite often we read in the suttas, a group of ascetics gathered in the squirrel sanctuary. Yeah. And then they'll be debating and right? We read about it a couple of weeks ago. So it was then popular that would be different. Orders is the ascetic orders, and they would be debating with each other. So by the time the Buddha, this group, around about this time, the majority of the kingdom of Magadha had become, here it says transfer its allegiance. Basically, they took refuge in the Triple Gem, yeah? Okay. A group of naked ascetics, resentful over this loss of prestige. It is in a way a prestige because imagine if you're a famous debater or a famous teacher or a famous ascetic or a famous philosopher at the time, it's kind of like your livelihood. I mean, your support, people, the lay people support you. So if people lose faith in you, then you lose your support. So a lot of people, a group of them, were resentful, losing that support. Pinned the prime responsibility for their hard times on the Venerable Maha Moggallāna. They believed that Moggallāna had won over their own adherence to the Buddha's Dharma with reports of his celestial travels, in which he related how he had seen the virtuous devotees of the Buddha enjoying rebirth in heaven, and the followers of other sects lacking moral conduct, suffering in miserable subhuman states of existence. So they conjure, it's their perception basically. It's their perception that Maha Moggallāna won over their own disciples through, traveling to the heavenly realms and then telling people that, devotees of the Buddha go up to heaven, others go below human realm. This is their perception. I can't imagine Maha Moggallāna, expounding the Dhamma like that. Okay, maybe he would have said things in a different manner, but sometimes the message gets misconstrued. All right. Again, down to perception. And these ascetics were so enraged about their loss of popularity that they wanted to eliminate Maha Moggallāna. And without accepting responsibility for their own misfortune, which is, again, not uncommon, it's easier to blame other people than ourselves, they projected the blame externally and concentrated their envy and hate on the great disciple. Okay, so they're planning a revenge. So even the Buddha himself, even his chief disciples, no matter how much their practice has been and is towards their final life, they also are not free from others wanting to take revenge on them or others wanting to cause them harm. So in terms of the Buddha, his own cousin, Devadatta, had planned to cause harm on the Buddha several times, and once managed to at least cause the Buddha's toe to bleed. Yeah, so didn't kill the Buddha, but managed to harm his toe a little bit. So it's sometimes, I don't know, useful as a reflection. I like to think of it as personally well, you know, somebody says something about me, or somebody thinks in the wrong way about me, or somebody spreads incorrect rumors about me, or whatever, so on and so forth. Well, the Buddha and his disciples were also not free from that either. So who am I to compare, right? So we are not free ever from any form of false accusations or hatred or whatsoever. But it's important to understand that it's all subject to perceptions, volitional formations, basically how the whole process of dependent origination works that leads to that state of the craving, that leads to the clinging, that leads to the habitual tendency of hatred that keeps on looping. So there's as we know, the whole steps of dependent origination that precede that, for those who are new to dependent origination, on these Samatha Vipassana, and also the twin YouTube channel, plenty of resources. Just go and search dependent origination in the YouTube channel itself, and as in the twin YouTube channel, and you will be able to find. In fact, I think there was a Venerable Sister Kema used to do a workshop, even a full workshop and on dependent origination. So for those who aren't familiar, head down to there, and then you can follow the workshop. Okay, let's come back to here. So while the ascetics were hesitant to kill Maha Moggallāna by their own hand, they had no scruples about employing others to carry out their deed. And this is common even till today. Some people, they're like, I can't do that bad deed. I can't bring myself to kill somebody or to cause harm to somebody, but I can pay somebody to do that. And there are always people willing to do that. So even from the time of the Buddha, 2,600 and plus, maybe 2,500 plus 2,600 years ago till today, there are always going to be people who are willing to kill somebody or harm somebody for a fee. Okay, so having procured 1,000 gold coins, that's a lot of money, I think, even those days. Having procured 1,000 gold coins from their followers, wow, okay. They approached a band of brigands and offered them the money in exchange for the great disciple's life. And at that time, Maha Moggallāna was living alone in a forest hut at the Black Rock on the slope of Mount Izigili outside Rajagaha. And after his encounter with Mara, we read about that the last time, he knew that the end of his days was near. So he kind of had that in his mind. And having enjoyed the bliss of liberation, he now felt the body to be an obstruction and burden, and had no desire to use his psychic faculties to keep it alive for the rest of the aeon. So actually, what's trying to say, Maha Moggallāna, with his psychic ability, actually could extend his life for an aeon, which is a very long time. Yet, when he saw the brigands approach, he knew they were coming to kill him. And he used his supernormal powers to slip through the keyhole. The gangsters arrived at an empty hut, and though they searched everywhere, they could not find him. They returned the following day too. But this time, the elder soared up into the air and escaped through the roof. The next month too, the bandits came, but again, they could not catch the elder. So here in parentheses, in the Jataka version, the bandits return on six consecutive days and catch him only on the 7th day. okay? Whereas in the Dhammapada, it's after a month. Moggallāna's motivation in escaping was not fear of death. He knew he was going to die anyway. Yeah. The reason he used his psychic powers to elude the gangsters was not to protect his body, but to spare the would-be assassins the frightful karmic consequences of such a murderous deed, necessary leading to rebirth in the hells. Definitely, because they were killing an arahant, and he wanted to spare them. And this brings me back to on Saturday, I was at a restaurant, and it reminded me of one of the tales, I think, from the Jatakas, where there was a goat and a Brahmin. And during those days, I think even till today, they sometimes do it, the Brahmin was about to slaughter the goat as a sacrificial offering to the gods, let's say, right? And just as the Brahmin was about to strike the goat started laughing. And this is the story, okay, in the Jataka anyway. And imagine how shocked the Brahmin was, because he would expect, animals who are about to get slaughtered, usually they know, some of them try to escape, but they would be in a lot of fear. But this goat was laughing. So the Brahmin said, "Oh, I'm about to kill you. Why do you think it's so funny? Why are you not afraid?" And then the goat said, this is a story, okay? The goat said, "Well, I used to be like you, slaughtering goats as sacrificial lambs, as sacrificial offerings to the gods. I used to be like you. And when I did that, I became reborn again as a sacrificial goat, many times." And then the story goes something like, and this is the, I don't know, 500th time or 5,000th time, I can't remember the number in the story. And this is the last time I'm going to be reborn as a goat that's going to be sacrificed. Then the next moment, the goats started crying. And then the Brahmin like, "Oh, but why are you crying now?" And then the story goes, the goat says to the Brahmin, "Well, I'm crying for your fate, because I know what's going to happen to you. So I'm crying for your fate, because you will go through the same thing very soon." So when we are reading this, it just reminded me of that Jataka story. Very popular, just can't remember where it is, but very popular Jataka story about the goat being the sacrificial offering and the Brahmin that was about to kill him. Okay, so similarly, Maha Moggallāna was trying to avoid that karmic consequence for these gangsters. So he wanted to spare them such a fate by giving them time to reconsider and abstain from their crime. But their greed for the promised money was so great that they persisted and returned again the following month, or in terms of the Jataka, on the 7th day. Well, if you think about it, during those days, it's 2,000, almost 600 years ago. 1,000 gold coins is a lot, yeah. And this time their persistence was rewarded, for at that moment, Moggallāna suddenly lost his psychic mastery over the body. And the reason for this sudden change in fate lay in a terrible deed he had committed in the distant past. Yes, Maha Moggallāna also committed past deeds, terrible deeds. We don't know. I don't know. Maybe I committed a very terrible deed in many aeons ago. Who knows? So many aeons ago, in a previous birth, Maha Moggallāna had brought about the death of his own parents. In the Jataka version, however, he relents at the last moment and spares them. So I'm not too sure about that. Okay, though from memory, the stories that I remember, yes, he did kill his own parents. And that heinous karma had brought him to a rebirth in hell for countless years, because that's one of the 5 heinous crimes that will bring you to the lowest of hells. Let me think. So, killing mother and father, causing schism in the Sangha, hurting a Buddha. There's 2 more. Hurting a Buddha, killing your own father and mother, causing a schism in the Sangha. I can't remember the other 2. I'm so sorry. I have to come back to you on that one. But there are 5 heinous crimes that will lead to hell, the lowest one. Okay, for a while. So that heinous karma had brought him to a rebirth in hell for countless years, but it had not yet fully matured. So there's a residue. And that residue remained, and now when he was in mortal danger, that residue suddenly ripened and confronted him with its fruit. And Maha Moggallāna realized that he had no choice but to submit to destiny. The brigands entered, knocked him down, pounded his bones until they were as small as grains of rice. This one I'm not sure, but anyway, he was really badly beaten up. Then, thinking that he was dead, they threw his body behind a clump of bushes and fled, keen on collecting their reward. But Maha Moggallāna's physical and mental strength was formidable, and he had not yet capitulated to death. He regained consciousness, and by the power of meditation, he soared through the air and came into the presence of the Buddha. And there he announced that he would attain final Nibbana. So even at his last moment, he still wanted to pay the Buddha his final visit, final homage. And the Buddha asked him to give a final sermon to the community of monks, which he did, with an additional display of wonders and marvels, psychic ability. Then he paid homage to the Blessed One, returned to the Black Rock, and passed into the Nibbana element without residue. The Jataka account more realistically omits the final sermon and has Moggallāna expire right at the Buddha's feet. Anyway, both did say that Maha Moggallāna did go and pay homage to the Buddha before passing away. In this last turbulent phase of his life, the karma of the past that had ripened so suddenly could affect only his body but could not shake his mind, for he no longer identified himself with his empirical personality, so his body. Yeah? For him, the 5 aggregates that others identified as Maha Moggallāna were as foreign as an inanimate body. So these 2 verses are from the Theragatha. Excuse me. They penetrate the subtle truth as the tip of a hair with an arrow, who see the 5 aggregates as alien and do not regard them as self. Those who see conditioned things as alien and not as self have pierced right through the subtle truth as a tip of a hair with an arrow. So what it's trying to say is the vision of being able to see how the 5 aggregates form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness is not a self. That ability to see not just through knowledge, but through vision is as sharp as piercing a tip of a hair. Tip of a hair is time. Like how do you pierce through a tip of a hair? You have to be really sharp. So he was using that analogy to say the sharpness, the level of his vision. Not just knowledge, but a vision, true understanding. So this last episode of Moggallāna's life, however, did show that the law of moral causality, cause and effect, has an even greater potency than the supernormal feats of a master of psychic power. Only a Buddha can control the karmic consequences acting upon his body to such an extent that nothing might cause his premature death. Speaking about his chief disciples, shortly after their death, the Buddha declared, "Those who in the past have been holy ones, fully enlightened ones, those blessed ones too, had such excellent pairs of disciples as I had in Sariputta and Moggallāna. Those who in the future will be holy ones, fully enlightened ones, those blessed ones too will have such excellent pairs of disciples as I had in Sariputta and Moggallāna." Marvelous it is, most wonderful it is, because concerning those disciples, that they will act in accordance with the master's teaching, will act in accordance with his advice, that they will be dear to the four assemblies, will be loved, respected, and honored by them. So here I'm assuming the four assemblies are bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen. I'm assuming. Yeah. Sariputta and Maha Moggallāna were such wonderful disciples, the Buddha said, that the assembly of monks appeared empty to him after their death. It was marvelous that such an excellent pair of disciples existed. But it was marvelous too that in spite of their excellence, when the two had passed away, there was no grief, no lamentation on the part of the master. Because the master himself, the Buddha himself, is fully enlightened. Therefore, the Buddha continued, inspired by the greatness of the two chief disciples, let dedicated followers of the Dhamma strive to be their own island of refuge, with the Dhamma as their island of refuge, not looking for any other refuge. So this also, again, appears quite often in the suttas. Let them rely entirely on the powerful help of the four foundations of mindfulness. Those who with keen desire thus train themselves along the Noble Eightfold Path will certainly pass beyond all the realms of darkness which abound in samsara. So the master assures us. And that wraps up the reading on Venerable Maha Moggallāna. So the next time we come together, we shall continue with Maha Kassapa. So again, Kassapa is a common name during the time of the Buddha. And so when we say Maha Kassapa, then we are referring to Maha Kassapa, who is one of the senior disciples during the Buddha's time. So we will read his story the next time. Okay. And chapter 3 is commentated by Hellmuth Hecker. Oh, we have a comment. There are 5 sins. Yes, thank you, Paul. Yes, okay, 5 sins. Number 1, killing one's mother. Number 2, killing one's father. Mother and father separate, okay. Number 3, killing an arhat. Yes, yes, yes. Number 4, injuring the body of the Buddha, which is what Devadatta succeeded in doing, and causing a division in the Buddhist community, or causing a schism in the Sangha, which is what Devadatta did as well. So yeah, Maha Moggallāna was trying to save the bandits from this heinous crime of killing him because he was an arhat, not because he feared death. Okay, thank you, Paul. Very good. Anyone has any comments before we wrap up? Yes? No comments? Okay. So I hope this was a good summary in a sense. This book is really like a summary of their life story, because it's taken from different parts of the suttas that give these ideas, these stories. So these readings are also meant to be not just to listen and read their stories as a way of entertainment, although I realize sometimes I do sound like I'm entertaining, but also meant to, there's a lot of lessons to be learned and a lot of reflections that we can utilize, we can use to support our practice. That's why we read them. And also as a form of inspiration and also as a form of strengthening faith in our practice. Because the 5 factors, faith, energy, mindfulness, collectedness, or productive concentration, and wisdom. So the first one is faith. So sometimes reading these stories are also another tool, another way of increasing that faith. But obviously the best way to nurture the faith, I think, is through direct knowledge and vision, through direct experience. So that's why we need to continue to practice. Anyway, okay, if there are no further comments or thoughts, then we can wrap up. We can share merits. Okay, let me see. So let us share merits together. May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired, for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu. Thank you to those who dialed in. Thank you, Paul, for finding in that.
Thank you, Mei.
Thanks
for the reading. Thank you.
Happy Wesak. Next week, next Sunday, Bhante Dharma Gavesi will come give a talk.
Oh, what's the subject? Do you know?
I think he hasn't decided.
No
Haven't
problem.
seen the post come through. But he said he will be able to do the talk next Sunday.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Happy Wesak. Take care. Happy
Yes,
smiling.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Keep smiling. Be happy.
Bye.